It's true. Someone asked me today, are you really flying around the world and back in 1 week? On Sunday at 6 a.m., I will, not with my family for pleasure, but with Temple and with Memphis area leaders who believe in Temple's sacred mission of Tikkun Olam, being God's partner in fixing, healing, and repairing this broken world wherever and whenever possible. Memphian and Temple Israel wonder kid Alan Lightman conceived the project known as Harpswell from his own Jewish impulse, which he got and dedicated to Rabbi Wax in one of his books. He conceived of this idea 5 years ago, and we as a congregation have been involved with Harpswell ever since. It's an idea, believe it or not, that is at this very moment transforming an entire nation on the other end of Israel's continent around the world. The nation is Cambodia, the people who 30 years after we Jews said never again, suffered the only genocide committed against educated people, adults, children, anyone with glasses, the slaughter of over 2 million people out of a country of under 8 million people. And it only ended when I finished high school in 1979, 1980. Now, our bat mitzvah girl, Emma Mansberg, will read from the end of chapter 2 and the beginning of chapter 3 of this week's Torah portion. It's something you all know. It's an entirely new book of the Torah, the second book, Exodus, known as Shemot. And in the section just before what Emma will read, after baby Moses is born, the prince of Egypt, the Torah explains why being a Jew means looking out for others. Whether it's the children at the Church Health Center our bat mitzvah works with each week, or the first 84 girls in the history of Cambodia, children of the genocide, the first to attend college, and with their educations, thanks to us and others, returning to lead their country from darkness to light. What does that have to do with the Torah portion? It says, Vayehi bayamim hahem vayigdal Moshe vayetze el echav, which means, and it came to pass when Moses vayigdal, when he grew up, he went out to his brethren, to his brothers and sisters. But here's the deal. The word vayigdal doesn't just mean when he grew up, it means when he became great. What's the point of the Torah? We grow up and become great only when we reach out to our brothers and sisters and see all God's children as our brothers and sisters. That's what this Dr. King weekend urges us to do. It's not a day off from school or a ski weekend. It means you grow up and you become great by reaching out to others. King Day is our only national holiday named for a religious leader. And in spiritual terms, Moses and Dr. King were preaching the same sermon, which is, there is a connectedness and mutual respect we share as humanity. And that is why, in a very real way, when I landed at Harpswell in Cambodia last January to meet the girls in the living center we helped build, it felt like coming home. Just like Israel in a different way, Israel, my Jewish brothers and sisters, Cambodia, girls whose parents are survivors of a genocide. What I've learned from the relationship between Cambodia and our city in the United States is that bending to a common purpose is more important than arising from a common place. Think about that. Bending to a common purpose is more important than arising from a common place. What's the common purpose? It's the idea that success in life must include what Happy just sang, doing our best to leave this place stronger and better than the way we found it, and never giving up. That's what the emblem of the ark in our main sanctuary represents. You know the story. Behold, the Torah continues, there was a bush that was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. That burning bush has become a symbol both of the light of God and of the eternal endurance of the Jewish people. We Jews were exiled, persecuted, tortured frequently for centuries around the world. We were driven by cruel oppressors from pillar to post, yet we always managed to keep alive that flame of goodness, decency, education, morality. We Jews are an eternal people because we believe that the guideposts for goodness and decency and education and morality are eternal. And that symbol of the burning bush, of that eternal light of God, doesn't just speak to our own people, but to all people, I hope, who have suffered discrimination and persecution. You know, Elie Wiesel, survivor of our genocide, poet of the Holocaust, tells the story of a boy shouting words and phrases in the middle of a city, bustling with people who were doing bad things. And the boy shouting words and phrases like, treat other people kindly and with dignity, always learn, educate, think for yourself, give thanks, help others. A bystander approaches the boy and says, hey kid, do you really think you're going to change these people in this city and this world? Not at all, the boy replied. I'm not shouting these words because I think that I will necessarily change them. I'm shouting these words so that they do not change me. The story reminds me of the effect these 84 select girls with intellect, ambition, and leadership potential have begun on the other side of God's world. As one reminded me last year when I sat on the floor eating a meal with them at Harpswell, they quoted in broken English Margaret Mead, the cultural anthropologist's words, never doubt that a few people can't change the world, Rabbi. It's the only thing that ever has. Judaism is based on a commitment to change the world. And that statement would seem too grand, even absurd, if history did not show that Judaism has indeed changed the world. I'm going to close, before we close our service, with the Moses, King, Cambodia, social justice, Tikkun Olam story for you never to forget from our tradition. It's the famous story about a man walking down a street who sees a mansion on fire, a birah doleket, if you want to study the Hebrew with me. And he calls out, who's in charge of the place? Who's in charge of this place that's burning? And nobody's taking care of the birah doleket, the mansion on fire. The owner, the manhig, comes out and says, I'm the owner. Person says, how can you let this fire happen? Put it out. Then the rabbis say the same thing about the father of Judaism as he walks through this life, seeing that the world is on fire. So Abraham has the sensibility, like the guy in the Midrash, to call out to God, the owner of the world, hey, who's in charge of this place? How can you let this happen? To which God replies, how can you let this happen? That's Judaism. So the Midrash ends that God and Abraham join hands, and they go out to respond to a world on fire. The Jewish impulse for justice begins with the recognition that there is a huge chasm, a gulf between the world as it is and the world as it should be, and that parts of this world really are burning before us. And our life's work every day is to narrow the gap between what is and what ought to be. You know, a well-intentioned Jew from a more observant stream of Judaism asked me, I know you're bringing 500 people to Israel within 8 years. That's great. I know you go to all the Jewish causes. But why is Temple so involved in the greater community beyond Jews? Why even saving a country like Cambodia? And my reply is that a Reformed Jewish synagogue that does not alleviate the anguish of the suffering is a contradiction in terms. What's required in a synagogue, believe it or not, is not a rabbi, but a window, so that you don't forget the world outside. The God I believe in closing, is embarrassed when somebody else claims, whether they're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim or other, that only he or she knows God's will. The God I believe in expects me to do the best I can to be a better person. Faith in God and Judaism, I believe, can turn us into better human beings and not just better Jews. That's why the mission of the Jew, to quote Wiesel, has never been to make the world more Jewish. It's to make the world more human. I want to close finally with the outgoing president of our Reform movement, who said at the biennial in Washington, where I led services last month, what he said, and I caught part of it, more or less. He said that Reform Judaism stands for a Judaism of inclusiveness, from the youngest to the oldest. We leave no person behind. We stand for a Judaism of hope, of increasing the light in the darkest corners of the world. And finally, we stand for a Judaism of justice, of fulfilling the mitzvah. Do not stand idly by while any baby or person bleeds. Ken Yehi Ratzon. So may Judaism be for all of us. Let us say, Amen.